Well, now to our story of the outback trade between young Indigenous girls and truck drivers offering money and drugs for sex in dimly lit truck stops. Our reporter John Stewart began his investigation by speaking to Aboriginal elders in Boggabilla-Moree. It was the elders who convinced the young women to speak to Lateline. They're desperate to stop the trade, which some say has drawn in girls as young as 8 years old. Here's John Stewart's exclusive report.
In northwestern New South Wales, the big rigs rule the road. Each week, thousands of trucks pass through Moree and Boggabilla on the New South Wales-Queensland border. But some drivers don't just bring their heavy loads. They also bring drugs, amphetamines, ice and marijuana, and cash for sex with Aboriginal girls.
Well, some truckies, they want to do it for $25, but that's, well, the limit is for me, it's got to be $80 and a bit of gear. But we do get like truckies on the streets and they only want to do it for $25.
We're scared, we're worried and concerned about the young girls, and it's affecting the young girls so badly, like mentally, physically and every other way.
This is Boggabilla at night. Young girls sit near the highway in sight of the passing trucks. It's a small town of 700 people. Most are Aboriginal. When the girls run out of money, they wander up the highway to the truck stop. Some try to get cash before the pub shuts. This hidden camera shows the parking area behind the service station, where the truck drivers spend the night. It's here that some drivers pay for sex with local girls. Lateline has been told that some are as young as 8 years old.
It's believed that she started when she was about 8 years old. So, yeah. She's recently become a mother, 15-year-old mother.
Aboriginal women and girls say the sex trade with truck drivers is driven by a need for cash and drugs.
Is it more about getting cash or is it more about just getting the drugs?
It's the drugs, because you need money to get drugs.
And what sort of drugs? Speed,
ice. Ice messed a lot of people up in Moree, huh?
This 14-year-old Aboriginal girl in Boggabilla says that truckies are paying small amounts of cash for sex with two of her friends, also aged 14.
Do the girls ever tell you how much money they're given by the truckies? Do they ever walk out and say, I've got $50 or 20, or like what sort of amount do they tell you?
50.
About $50.
That's a huge amount of money for these young girls, and more often than not it's a survival thing. It's to put food in the house, and and it appears that the truckies are cashing in on that dysfunction, yes, and taking advantage of people, the young girls that have no money.
All of the young women and girls who have spoken to Lateline have had frightening experiences with truck drivers. They say that rapes are common and are not reported to the police.
One night I jumped in with one, and there was actually like two of them in there, so I couldn't really get away that easy.
Have you ever been raped by a truckie or two guys in a truck?
Well, more or less people would say that, you know, a woman would ask for it if you jumped in the truck, but then when, you know, if you don't want to do stuff, like, it should be your decision, not considered to both of them.
The cops pulled us over one night and said that one of the young girls got abducted in a truck. And oh man, I just spun out and I said to the cop, like, who is she? and he told me her name. And her father and her mother come along and in the car, and I was just telling them to go out to the silos, you know what I mean? I was freaking out, yeah. And that snapped me out of it too, from that young girl.
How old would she have been?
13.
The young women and girls say that truckies sometimes spike alcoholic drinks to avoid having to pay for sex. Some girls have woken up to find themselves in Brisbane, Melbourne and Sydney.
They couldn't say what actually happened to them, but they were like coming to and bruised and...
Waking up?
Yeah, like coming out of a sleep and more or less just bruised from where they didn't know what happened from more or less the time that they've jumped in.
All the Aboriginal women who spoke with Lateline say the truckies prefer the younger girls and actively seek them out.
I've heard heaps of them say like they're looking for 16 years and under, 15, you know, under the legal age.
So the real market is under 16?
Yeah, for a lot they want young girls.
And have they ever asked you to go find one?
Yeah, they've asked me if, you know, like some have actually wanted, like, you know, would say, yeah, well, if you go and get a young girl, there's money in it for you, you know, stuff like that.
And what sort of age were they? Did they specify an age?
Yeah, like 14, 15, nothing over 16.
A number of years ago, Boggabilla elders met members of the National Indigenous Violence and Child Abuse Task Force to discuss the child prostitution problem. They expressed concerns that young police constables were having sex with Aboriginal girls and women aged between 17 and 30.
There were a couple of local constables that were known to be having relations with up to 25 different women within the community. So yeah, they were abusing their power in that sense.
Did they have sexual relations with teenage Aboriginal girls?
Yep, from teenage girls up to about 30-year-old women.
How did that affect the way they did their job in terms of their ability to police things?
Well, if there was any grievances within the community that went to court, the women that were involved with the police officers would threaten not to turn up to court, or they would say if they were subpoenaed to court that they wouldn't testify, or they'd tell the judge that they were having sexual relationships with the police officers, and then the police officers would just drop it.
The federal member for Barwon, Kevin Humphries, says he told the New South Wales Police about child prostitution and truckies 1 year ago. He says the police have their hands tied because the young girls refuse to report the truck drivers.
What can the police do about that? They can only do a certain amount. They've got to make sure that people can come forward and are prepared to step up and be honest about what they're seeing and being able to report. Until people actually step up and say, well, yes, I will be a witness, I will verify that, makes it very difficult for the police to actually follow through on anything.
Kevin Humphries says that child prostitution in Moree spiked about 1 year ago, but the local police now have it under control.
I have spoken to the police about it and they did act on it, which was good.
In a statement to Lateline this afternoon, the New South Wales Police Force said,
"Police have been working very hard with other government agencies to obtain evidence of child sexual assault. We continue to work closely with the community to gain information that can lead to arrests. There is no evidence that would substantiate the claim that any officers at Boggabilla have had any relationships that have compromised their ability to do their duty."
But Aboriginal community leaders in Boggabilla and Moree insist the child prostitution trade with truck drivers has not stopped in over a decade and continues every week. 10 years ago, Will Munroe worked for a youth service in Moree. He says authorities were repeatedly told about the truck drivers and child prostitution.
Our management and our overseeing committee bring it to the attention of all relevant bodies, police, docks, Aboriginal groups in the town. But not just that, I mean, it was common knowledge in the community what was going on and who the girls was and the fact that nothing was actually being done about it.
This is not just a problem at Moree and Boggabilla. Aboriginal community leaders have told Lateline that young Aboriginal girls are also being targeted by truck drivers further west at Walgett and on the New South Wales coast at Coffs Harbour. Tonight, a spokesman for the Australian Trucking Association said,
"Most trucking companies ban passengers from the cabs of their trucks. Professional truck drivers know that their truck cabin is a workplace. They want to be able to focus on getting their job done safely."
For the elders in Boggabilla, the child sex trade is an ugly reminder of relations between white men and black women in the past.
So what I can make of it and what I see of it, again we come up against the same thing where these white men are raping our young girls again. And it's really just like that at the moment. It goes back to the days when they were out on the properties and anywhere that white men saw Aboriginal women and girls, they took advantage of them. And that's the scary part about it for me.
After 6 years of working on the highways at Moree, one young Aboriginal woman summed it up like this.
It's not a thing that you want to do, and it's just hurtful and it's painful and it's heartaching. And in the end, it doesn't get you anywhere. And I just don't want to say no more.